This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi friends, Rusty back here with the latest Meteo Mundo forecast. I hope you're having a great day. In this forecast, we'll take a look at the weather conditions and the forecast across the entire Caribbean and the Bahamas. Some of the areas that I expect to see some heavier rain over the next couple of days. And I'll have the latest on that disturbance in the Caribbean, where it's headed, and the impacts that I expect. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that as of the taping of this forecast, we've hit 5,000 subscribers at Meteo Mundo. I just want to take a second and thank everyone for your support. We only launched the channel about a month ago. Now, in order to continue to do this, it's vital that we continue to grow. So some easy ways to help us out: just click that like button on this video, subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and tell your family and friends about us as well. All of those things will have more YouTube users see our channel that don't even know that we exist right now. So thank you for your support. Let's get into it here. Again, we're watching this disturbance moving west across the Caribbean. Now, the Hurricane Center continues to slightly lower the chance of development. It was at 70% yesterday. Right now, it's at 50%. Does that change my thinking as to the impacts I expected to bring to the Caribbean and Central America? No, because this is always going to be about the rainfall potential. The models never really tried to wrap this up into a big wind maker, but we still have Invest 97L. There it is. It's moving west at around 15 miles an hour. Maximum sustained winds right around 30. Still have a good flare up of storms around it, but nothing has really quickly wrapped up. And I got to tell you, the models now are trending weaker and weaker, even if this thing tries to get going. Maybe a depression, maybe right now the highest end, a very weak tropical storm, but the moisture associated with this just continues to be absolutely astronomical here. Let me show you that moisture on the water vapor imagery from the upper levels. You're just going to see a lot of green on this map. There's an abundant amount of moisture, there's warm sea surface temperatures, and if nothing else, it has really flared up some very heavy rainfall for portions of the Caribbean, and that will be the story as it moves into Central America. So for what's happening right now on this Wednesday, our friends in Jamaica, Kingston area, we've already had some showers and downpours there, and that will continue across the island as we go through the remainder of this Wednesday. There'll be isolated heavier downpours, but certainly rain across the island, and that will move west towards Montego Bay and Negril. So a relatively wet forecast, and there's more rain on the way for Jamaica in the next couple of days. We'll look at that coming up. Beginning to dry out for the Leeward Islands. We've had that lately as that moisture's moved west. Same thing for Puerto Rico. And it's also beginning to actually dry out a bit for the Dominican Republic and Haiti as well. Most of that moisture is actually to the south of the area, but then you get south towards the ABC Islands, and that is one area that I expect to continue to see the potential for some heavier rain even as that disturbance moves west. So for Aruba and Curacao and Bonaire, again, may not be extremely widespread, but certainly heavier downpours are likely through the remainder of this Wednesday, and potentially even as we head out towards our Thursday as well. Then as we move into time, we're going to start to see more and more rain move into Central America, and that's going to be the big story of this. Already some showers developing well ahead of the actual center of this disturbance, which again is very still broad and ill-defined. But let's talk about the rainfall potential here. So we'll move into that, and I'm going to show you the GFS model over the next 5 days. And you know, one thing that I've been able to show you here is we're getting more consistency with the models on the track and the intensity and the timing. On the GFS model, you're going to see a very weak broad system move right into Central America beginning on Friday. And then it's about the rainfall prospects and the potential for some heavy flooding rains, some urban flooding, some flooding, some higher terrain leading to some mudslides. All of that is going to be a possibility. I will say this, it's going to be extremely hard to pinpoint where that heaviest rain is going to set up, because this is going to be such a broad disturbance, and whatever circulation is moving into Central America is going to get ripped apart by the higher terrain. So it's actually a very difficult forecast, tricky forecast when you're talking about where the heaviest rain is going to set up. If you notice on the GFS model, I mean, we do have some heavier rain all the way down towards Panama and Costa Rica, but especially up towards Nicaragua and Honduras. If we're looking at the timing of this, I'm going to back it up just a little bit here. As we get into late tomorrow, but especially on Friday, we'll start to see some of that heavier rain set up. And by the way, on the western coastline, places like El Salvador and the western sides of Guatemala have been having to deal with Pilar, a system in the eastern Pacific, which is moving away. So they're kind of getting a 1-2 punch out of it. But the bottom line is heavy rain will be moving in beginning on Friday and through the weekend. And then we'll just have to see how much rain and where that heavier rain sets up. Now, in general, that heavier rain will move north as we go deep into the weekend and early next week, but we'll talk about how that is still up in the air a bit, especially for the Yucatan. A little bit higher chances for that heavier rain for Guatemala and Nicaragua and Honduras. Belize certainly could see some heavier rain as well, but I'll talk about, some subtle changes in the models that I'll be keeping a very close eye on. So let's look at the GFS model and the rainfall totals over the next 5 days in Central America. And again, they're going to be very high and even a little bit farther south of where we were talking about yesterday. So let me pause this. We'll get it out all the way out over the next 5 days and even down towards San Jose. And let me make sure we're all 5 days out. Even out towards San Jose, Costa Rica, you're looking at, again, 4, potentially 5 inches of rain. And that kind of rainfall total on the GFS model is possible towards Managua and then basically right towards the coastline of both Nicaragua and Honduras. It picks up as far as the rain totals when you get into Honduras towards San Pedro Sula here. And again, a little bit lower back towards Tegucigalpa. But you're talking about higher terrain and mudslide issues. Now, I do think there's a bit of convective feedback with this model. And what I mean by that is it's painting on so much rain just offshore. And then you get inland, it's not painting on nearly as much. So I think it's having a little bit of difficulty kind of discerning the land-water interaction. But copious amounts of rain are possible. Now you get up towards Belize City, and right now it's showing somewhere around 4 or 5 inches of rain, just kind of depending on where we're looking at. But that shouldn't be all the rain that you see. We'll go out into time a little bit deeper into early next week where more rain could fall in places like Belize. But again, through the weekend and into Monday, you're looking at some potentially significant rainfall totals for a lot of Central America, maybe not as much for Guatemala City and San Salvador, but they had a lot of rain out of Pilar, that eastern Pacific storm. Now for the remainder of the Caribbean, what are we looking at rainfall total wise? Well, up towards Georgetown there in the Cayman Islands, a couple of inches of rain. That's what I expect for portions of Jamaica as well. Again, the heaviest moisture axis is south of Jamaica. That's good news, but the rain potential will continue to be high at least through Friday for Kingston and Negril and Mandeville and Portmore and Spanish Town. So tropical downpours, maybe not as widespread as areas off towards the south, but certainly, again, good downpours leading to a few inches of rain. And it's just an amazing moisture axis that this system is bringing. I mean, just look how much rain is going to fall in the open waters of the Caribbean before it gets into Central America. Some of the other areas that could see more rain, and again, I mentioned it before, Aruba and Curacao and Bonaire, maybe another few inches of rain, mainly between now and tomorrow, and then beginning to dry out Friday and into Saturday. So that's kind of the broad brush look at it. And again, the biggest concern I have is the Central America rainfall totals and some of the flooding that it could lead to. That's something I'm going to closely monitor as we get closer to the weekend. And we'll talk a lot more about that. But again, don't look at one number, all right? Just look at the averages here and look at how high some of these numbers are on the GFS model, especially along the coastline. Now, as far as it being a wind maker, again, that threat appears to be diminishing. This is the GFS model, which this time yesterday still had a fairly wrapped up system of a tropical depression or weak tropical storm strength. If you look at the model now, there's really no core moving in. Now, we could still get a disturbance on the GFS model, but as far as, even a tropical storm, I think those chances are lowering. So again, this is going to be a broad disturbance, heavy rainmaker for Central America and portions of the Northwest Caribbean. So looking at the latest track on the GFS model, I do want you to notice a subtle change. The GFS model now pulls it through Central America and into the Eastern Pacific. Just 6 hours ago, the last model run of the GFS still had that recurve gaining latitude north and west through Honduras and then into Belize and eventually the southern sides of the Yucatan. We'll see if that still plays out. There hasn't been a lot of consistency with that. I'm very happy that the models are in very good agreement, and at least we can start talking about more specifics through Friday night, because you saw the GFS model track. This is the European model track. It's in agreement with the GFS as far as timing, as far as track, and as far as intensity. You can see these pressure plots here of 1,005, 1,006 millibars, all indicative of a weak system moving into Central America on Friday night. So again, right in line with what the GFS is showing us. There is more discrepancy in the model as it gets inland, and the reason why is we really lose any discernible center of circulation. Whatever it is going to get ripped apart by the higher terrain there. And again, it just becomes more of an overall rainmaker as we get into the weekend and early next week. So speaking of that, let's get back over to our reflectivity product here. I'm going to go ahead and extend this out a few more days, and we'll talk about the northern sides of Central America and into the Yucatan. So let me make sure I've got the right product on here. There we go. All right, so I'm going to put this into motion, and now let's pick this up starting on our Monday into early to mid next week. Now, if the GFS model, the newest run, verifies and it goes a little bit farther off towards the south into the Pacific, that might keep some of the heaviest rain out of the Yucatan, especially the northern Yucatan, Cancun and Cozumel. That, I think, is probably the biggest question mark still in this forecast, because again, the rain is going to be so broad, it's going to be really hard to talk about exactly where the heaviest rain is going to fall and how widespread those impacts are going to be. But certainly when you get towards Belize still, for our friends in Belize City, there's still a fairly high chance for some significant rainfall in Belize. Again, maybe dropping down just a notch, and that's good news, but you can still see here as we get into, and I'll pause this as we get towards the weekend here, as we get towards the 5th and then 6th, as we get towards the early next week, the opportunity for some of that heavier rain to continue to fall. Now, again, for places like Cancun and Cozumel, we might be able to avoid some of the heaviest rain. I still expect it to be somewhat wet late weekend and into early next week. And what the models are trying to do is actually take some of this moisture and curve it back into the Northwest Caribbean. So some of this rain could sit just offshore and be fairly heavy at times. But as far as it really plaguing, the Yucatan and maybe some of your plans, hopefully that potential has dropped a little bit as well. But again, it's still what I think to be the most questionable part of this forecast is just how far north does this heavier rain move early to mid next week. Okay, let's get back into the rest of the forecast here. And again, look, if you've got a specific question about this disturbance, I'm more than happy to answer it. Just drop it in the comment section below. Let me know where you're viewing us from. Let me know what the weather has been like. And again, if you got a second to click that like button, thank you very much. I got to tell you, it's a beautiful forecast for the Bahamas the next several days. There is a cold front that is working its way into the northwest Bahamas. Look at all of this dry air. High temperatures in places like Freeport and Lucaya, down towards Nassau, could be in the 70s the next couple of days with a north breeze. It is going to be absolutely gorgeous. Not as nice as far as the humidity feel down towards the southeast Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos, but again, outside of a few showers there, I expect it to be mainly dry. Also mainly dry for the Puerto Rico area, Virgin Islands, and portions of the Lesser Antilles over the next couple days. There is a kind of broad area of a few showers and storms. That's not going to develop into anything, but I'll switch back over to the future rain and then move into that area just to show you that over the weekend, I do expect some moisture to be actually returning from the south, and we'll start to see more rain moving back into the Lesser Antilles here. Let me switch this back actually to just 6 days or 5 days so we don't go too far out into time. But you'll notice again, as we get late into the weekend, the 4th and the 5th, and then on Monday, better opportunities for some showers. Nothing that's going to be organized, but we'll start to kind of swing in more moisture for the entire Lesser Antilles. It might stay a little bit farther west than Puerto Rico, but for places like Trinidad and Tobago, if you're looking for some more rain, going to be relatively dry through Friday. Better rain chances moving in Friday late into Saturday and Sunday. And again, scattered in nature, downpours all the way up through Anguilla and Montserrat and Antigua and Barbuda. Nothing very organized, but just a better opportunity for some rain there that I'll be tracking as we get back into our weekend. Okay, so to wrap this up again, we have this disturbance moving off towards the west. I expect it to be a very heavy rainmaker for places like the ABC Islands, Jamaica, and the Cayman Islands the next couple of days, and then a very high potential for some significant rain through portions of Central America. Going to be hard to really discern where that heavy rain is going to set up until much closer in time. But that is something I'm going to keep a very, very close eye on for you, friends. Again, we are live streaming our system here. If you go to the live tab, you can get updated forecast tracks on where this disturbance is headed, real-time satellite and radar data, and current temperatures in your area. So look for that. Check in and out in between these forecast videos. I appreciate you again liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps us out tremendously. Have a great day, friends, and I promise you, we'll see you back here real soon at Meteo Mundo.